Let's talk about something sad. The fact that Armada Music released John Dahlbäck's Saga and Pablo Nouvel's All I Need on the same exact day, all while kind of over-promoting John Dahlbäck's album and kind of less promoting the illustrious Pablo Nouvel debut album. I first heard about John Dahlbäck back in about 2014 with his late release on Protocol Recordings' Fireflies, which I actually wasn't too impressed with. So when he finally released A Little More with Cascade, it kind of served as a bit of a redeeming track, being one of my favorites on Cascade's Automatic album. I was pretty excited to see what John Dahlbäck could do with a debut album, and honestly was fairly disappointed, especially by, like I said, the fact that Armada released two albums on the day, one being pretty awesome and diverse, and this other one being a fairly standard house album. Now, there are some interesting appearances on this. I didn't actually love a lot of the more unique tracks on this one. Just going track by track, if you start out with the Saga Intro, which is honestly one of the most pointless tracks on the album, and I think one of the most useless intros that I've seen in an album for the last couple years. This one really builds up, bah, bah, with this progression, slowly getting faster and faster, and then drops into absolutely nothing, followed by Into You, which is one of the more generic future house tracks I've heard in the last few months. I'm just so used to hearing this style that it doesn't come off as interesting in the slightest. Sycophant kind of takes the same route. In fact, a lot of this album we're just going to get kind of the standard future house sound, which is fairly disappointing, honestly, considering John Dahlbäck actually has potential to produce such interesting progressive house tracks, such as A Little More with Cascade. It's fairly disappointing considering the first three full tracks on this album are essentially your standard future house sounds. The third of which, Raven, sounds quite a bit like if Tujamo tried to make a future house track, which makes it a fairly disappointing listen, honestly. Not bad produced, which is where a good chunk of this album goes right. He's definitely got the quality, just the uniqueness is kind of stumbling in this one. Count to 10 featuring Alex Mack is actually one of the most memorable listens on this album. It's actually been stuck in my head for quite a few days. It's really memorable vocal chops, and the melody in this one definitely add up to something that I think could be a good direction for him, or at least if he used a little more diversity along with tracks like this, I think this would have made a really awesome record. Honestly, a good chunk of this thing is very coherent, and everything really sticks together as an album, which is another thing about this. Although I don't think the flow's amazing, which I really usually, to get a 10 out of 10 from me, you'd have to have really awesome flow. On this one, it's not amazing, but it's good enough, I guess I could say. Ain't You is kind of in that category of songs that I said are pretty unique but don't necessarily fit into my favorites. It's definitely a really cool track in the context of this record, really stepping away from that house sound and getting into maybe kind of a chill trap future bass sound, which I think is really cool. Atlantis is kind of giving me a Clean Bandit type of vibe with its violin-centered synthy house drop, and the following track, Terminus, is taking a little bit more of your 2013-2014 electro style. Then from there we get into one of my favorites on the album, which is the collab with Bully Songs, which I seem to like in recent months, the collabs with this artist, called Walking with Shadows. And this one kind of reminds me of perhaps a future house version of what Avicii tends to make, because this the lead melody in this thing leading up to the drop sounds very heavily like Avicii style, which I thought was really cool. It is one of my favorites on the record, although I am slightly disappointed to see it rip off such a sound as a producer like Avicii, who's delving into such a mainstream sound nowadays. For some reason, New York City featuring Luke McMaster has been getting a ton of popularity recently, which I haven't really understood because it's just about as standard as any other progressive house track on this album. Don't know why this one, maybe I can see a little bit on how it would poke out, being a little bit more unique than some of the releases on this one. Shivers is another one of those tracks, like I said, that you're getting a lot of kind of a different sound, but I don't necessarily love it. Really taking a slower approach to it, and the vocalist kind of reminds me a little bit of Zoe Johnston, who's collaborated with Above and Beyond a lot in the past, and maybe a little bit of Florence and the Machines sound. Untouched Hearts and Where You Are, more basic progressive house. Gargamel, more standard electro house. And finally, closing off with Aileen, which is actually giving me the kind of vibe that Julian Caller gave me on his debut that I reviewed last year, Evolve. Just not super impressed by a lot of the tracks on this album. Like I said, it is fairly coherent to its advantage, and these tracks are well produced, which I can give to him for being a producer that hasn't been completely under my radar in the last couple years. I think this one was solid at best, but fairly generic. So I'm thinking this one's a little less than average, for at least my thoughts. Others of you might have thought different, so let me know what you think in the comments below. Of course, this video is just my opinion, and I'm going to give this one a solid 4. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this little review, and sorry I haven't been uploading a lot lately. I was out this weekend at my grandparents' with no internet, and on Monday I actually probably would have filmed this well, but I was out at Monster Cat HQ over there, which was really fun. If you guys want to see me do a video talking about that or something, I might be interested to do that. But honestly, I just appreciate you guys for being supportive while I haven't been uploading a ton lately. I've got some really awesome reviews, hopefully coming out for some good albums fairly soon, and hyped to hear what 2016 has in store. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry if it dragged on a little too much, and I'll see you guys later. Peace.